You know what I decided to want to make a speech about is equality and not equality and society and all that stuff. And so I say people are not equal. Not at all. In fact, I would say that modern society takes this idea of equality not only way too far, but also in a stupid, retarded direction, in that it is basically never going to happen for there to be equality, in that a society would be truly just equal, where people are equal, because people are inherently not equal. You see, if you think about the greatest artists and all the most skilled people at some professions and all that stuff, you know, those people are superior to you if you are just someone who is not as good at something like that. And for the most part, most people are never going to get there. And instead of society embracing these great people and people trying to follow in the footsteps to try to better themselves and become better, and, like I said, for society to embrace the greatness, instead of doing that, people try to drag down the great and to achieve this equality. You see, the only way to achieve equality is by bringing down the people at the top. And I don't mean at the top of some hierarchy, I'm talking about people in the top, as in people who are like truly elite in the sense that they are skilled or even just great moral character, or any arbitrary quality, any trait a person could have, any sort of skill or something that could make them better than others. The only way to achieve equality is by bringing down the great. Because fundamentally, some low-life scum is never going to rise to the level of greatness that some humans can achieve. So therefore, if you want equality, the only way to achieve that fundamentally is by bringing down the great. And so, what does it mean to live in a society where people talk about equality, where equality is one of these big values and all that? Well, it is a sign of degeneracy. It is a society driven by envy of the great, where people, it is a natural human emotion to feel envy towards people who are better. And because there are people who are better, you can't not see that unless you are blinded by some ideology. People are fanatics of some ideologies and have stupid views and such, then of course they can be blinded by those ideologies, so they can't see reality. But like, if you look at the world honestly, you can see that people are not the same. People can be better than others. People are not equal. Now, I do want to clarify one thing. Equality can mean many things depending on the context. I do believe in an equality when it comes to equality before law, so that like every person should be like treated the same way in law, so the same law should apply to everyone. So I'm not in favor of a hierarchical society where like people like have some sort of a higher hierarchical role in society. That's not what I'm talking about here. Like that's different type of stuff. Like that's not what I'm talking about at all. I'm not talking about this sort of where there's like a caste system in a society and there are some noble people, like stuff like that. Like that's not what I'm talking about. Because those things are inherently based on bloodlines. And that's just nonsense. Like a great man can have a low-life scum son, but that son would still be a noble man like his great father was. So being from a certain bloodline doesn't mean anything, so that's retarded. That's stupid. So I'm not in favor of a hierarchical society. What I'm talking about is like a free society, where everyone basically like starts off on the same level, and then the ones who are great, they rise to the top on their own, basically. And there is no hierarchy, so like there are no structures that you like. There are some, yeah, there's no caste system. Like that's not what I'm talking about. So yeah, with that out of the way, people are not equal, and people will never be equal. And it's perhaps for the best that people never should be equal. Too many people, and especially like modern society in general, equality is treated as this big value. And of course, the most stupid of them all is the even more modern, even more recent equity. Oh, the equity and all the oppression and all that stuff that the woke people talk about. No, that's as stupid as it gets. That's one of those bizarre cults in modern society, but still, equality. What an unfortunate value. Society would be better off where people do not embrace equality. Equality before law is good, and where like everyone has the same law, and yeah, so like people are not treated differently based on some arbitrary bloodlines or something. Yeah, that's not good, but to then say that people like inherently are equal, like their worth, their value in society is the same, that's not true. It's just not true. And it's just not going to be true. There have been various ideologies across history who would try to achieve equality, or like take communism for example. They wanted to achieve equality, and like I just mentioned earlier, the only way to accomplish equality is by bringing down the great, and that's what communism does. Communism, it just tears apart the society entirely, and it reduces everyone down to the level of the lowest scum, because that's the only way to reach equality. You have to tear apart everything that makes a society great, because the great men are the ones who drive society inherently. The culture and all art and everything, it's all done by the people who are the elite. And I'm not talking about some hierarchical class. I'm not talking about classes, I'm talking about like people, individuals, persons, human beings, separate, discrete entities. The masses, the people, they don't create the best works of art. The masses don't create culture. They don't come up with scientific inventions. The masses don't do anything. It's the elite, it's the greatest of human achievement. It's the greatest people in the society who come up with all these things. They are the ones who push society forward and do things and create stuff. And it's not like it has to be some really tiny fraction. I mean, like different things, different inventions, different things done in society. You know, every separate thing that can be done, like works of art or just making, I don't know, I guess forming a business and making some economic progress or whatever. You know, different people do different things, of course, obviously. So it doesn't have to be some specific group of people who are the elite and they can do everything and then like the rest doesn't do anything. Like different people do different things. So each person can have, like if there's a list of traits, each and every individual can have like some of those traits and can be better or worse at every trait. So like, yeah, it's a big system with a lot of variables for each person. Anyway, yeah, so it's very unfortunate that we live in this society where greatness is not seen as a good thing, because that's what it is. Like that's what it is when you see equality. The very fact that people hold equality as a high value, or even worse, some equity nonsense. Yes, like, oof, that's bad. But like if you see that stuff, then you look at that, that's envy. But it's not just envy, like, inherently it's like a value, you know, it's just bad. It's bad. Bad in every way. It's envy, not just envy, it's envy of greatness. It's basically wanting to tear apart society. It's wanting to destroy everything, because that's what you will do in the process. In the process of dragging down the people who excel at something to achieve equality, you are going to tear apart those people, to drag them down. And with them, you bring down the culture and achievement, because those elite people, those great people who excel at something, those are the people who make the works of art and scientific inventions and the likes. You know, I'm not gonna just list off the top of my head whatever people do, but that's not the point. Anyway, the people who make the works of art and the scientific inventions, they are the few elites, the people who excel at something. So when you bring down those people, you bring down the society as a whole, because you bring down the culture and the scientific inventions and everything else that the people do. So it's very unfortunate. I would say that it should be that people embrace excellence. Every day you should try to be better than you were yesterday, basically like this fundamental thing. Like, that should be a value that people have. Embracing greatness, looking up to people, instead of tearing down the people who are good, great at something, the great people, whatever you want to call them. That's irrelevant. Instead of tearing them down, people should look up to them, try to be like them, perhaps try to reach excellence, you know, the pursuit of excellence and trying to better oneself. You know, that should be the primary driving factor of, like, that should be one of the highest values in a society. Instead of equality, like, equality is so miserable, because it's never going to happen unless you tear down the people who excel at something. That is fundamentally the only way. Unless there is some science fiction universe where some machines can replicate all the resources and do everything, and the machines can do everything, yeah, whatever, then you can have equality or whatever. But like that's some weird science fiction scenario, and yeah, and here notice the fact that it is fiction, science fiction. So yeah, that's fiction, that doesn't exist. So let's forget about the fiction and deal with the real world. It is very unfortunate. It is so unfortunate, because there is so much great potential, so much that humans can achieve and have achieved. There is so much that can be done and has been done. It is so unfortunate to throw it all away. And like, they want to make it sound like it's a good thing. Oh, equality is this nice thing, like, oh, people are equal and like whatever, like they try to make it sound like this really good thing. But it's not. It is not a good thing. It is a really bad thing. If anyone says that equality is one of their values, you should get away from those people. Like, or try to convert them to your values or whatever, you know. Like, equality is not what you want. Equality drives a society into a miserable state where there is no greatness anymore. Because, like I've now specified many times, stated many times, greatness is done by the few people. You know, like, take for example computers. Look at computers. Computers is this, like, people in like modern society, they like to congratulate themselves on like how we in the modern times are so much superior to like some historic peoples, because like we have all these computers and all this tech, all this technology everywhere, and like how people are like better than they were in the past. But that's not the case at all. The general population did not invent computers. if you pick up some random person off the street, they couldn't make a computer. And they never will, no matter like how much they tried, they could never do it. The general populations, the masses didn't do anything. It was the few people, the great people, who made computers. And computers is just an example, but it's a really good comparison. Good example. It's a really good example, because computers are such a big thing, and they are now a very prevalent thing in the world and society. And also I like computers too. But anyway, computers are inherently, I would say, one of the biggest achievements of mankind, like humans as a species. Computers, like fundamentally, if you think about it, you are creating this sort of a thing that can do stuff. Now that sounds like some stupid language, but it's hard to put to words. Just the amazing nature of a computer. It is basically doing mathematical operations and creating, like, there's this order to it. Anyway, I'm not gonna get into the philosophic nature of computers any more than that. But computers, they are awesome. I like computers very much so. Computers are really an excellent achievement that humans have done. But computers weren't done by the random people on the street. The computers were made by people who excelled at that field. People who were great. People who were better than everyone else. And you have to recognize that. Stop valuing equality. The people who made computers are not equal with everyone else who didn't. Those people who made computers are better than the ones who didn't. And I say that's good. I say that should be embraced, and those people should be celebrated, and it should be the goal of, like, the society to try to excel at things, to perpetuate this idea of greatness. It should be the value instead of some stupid equality. But I want to remind again, this is not incompatible with having equality before law. That's perfectly compatible with the pursuit of greatness. You can have people who are not equal, but who are still beholden to the same law. It's perfectly reasonable. Those are compatible. So don't make the mistake of thinking that me saying that people are not equal means that I would be in favor of some hierarchical classist society. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not in favor of that. In fact, that's a very bad idea. But yeah, people are not equal. Seeing the tearing down of great people, I find insufferable. What an unfortunate thing for the society to be in such a degraded state where, like it takes many forms. Like if you know what to look for and you think about it, like, you see it everywhere. It is so prevalent, this idea of tearing down the greatness. If you just think about that, and then you look at the things in the society and look at all the political issues, and it's everywhere. Like, take some random arbitrary examples of bringing in foreigners to countries, like all the immigration problems and whatever the foreigners are causing. The foreigners are brought in because people in the country don't think that their culture is valuable, that their people, like the ethnicity and the culture and everything that makes up the people in a state, like a nation state, you have a people. The people don't think that they are valuable enough to exist on their own. They want to bring in foreigners because inherently they're just not good enough on their own. So, like, everything from every political issue to every other, like every area, it's everywhere you want to tear down the greatness of everything. You want to tear everything apart. And, like, that's what's going on. It is inherently driven by this very unfortunate uh, very unfortunate. What should I say? I don't really know what to call it. This drive to like, it's not a good, like, they don't want to bring utopia. They don't want to bring utopia where everyone is equal or whatever. Like it's inherently like, that's just a mask. That's a facade. This utopian vision of this great equality and like how equality is a good thing and all that's like, that's a facade. That's a facade to hide the evil, sick mindset behind what actually is driving this. Like, that's the facade you are fooling people with to get them to go along with you, to pretend that you're this good guy because you want this equality and everything. You put up this facade, but really your actions are driven by this evil, sinister pursuit of bringing everyone down. Like, I don't know, like, are the people even aware of this is going on? Like, the people in favor of equality, like, perhaps they are fooling themselves. Like, that might be what's going on. Like, they are not even just fooling other people, like, trying to recruit other people to join their cause. Like, they are fooling themselves. They are lying to themselves to try to, like, cope with something. I don't know, like, human psychology is such a complicated field, and I'm not really all that familiar with it, but, like, if I imagine myself in that scenario, what would lead me to behave like that? Why would I do that? If I acted like that, what would be the reason? What would be driving my actions? Why would I think like that? Like, if I think about that, like, I mean, it just seems like there is this really weird, like, it's really weird, like, I find it disgusting. I find it repulsive. And frankly, I'd rather live in a society where I was the most stupid person and the society valued greatness and there were a bunch of, like, great people, than living in this miserable, awful, disgusting world where people want to tear down the greatness and then be at the top myself here. Because, like, well, actually, I don't know, is that really necessary for me to think that way? I mean, that's a false dichotomy. Because inherently, I want to pursue greatness. Will I ever get there? Who knows? But, like, that's the whole point, that, like, everyone should pursue it. The ones who are truly great and have some talent or skill, and maybe there is some luck to it as well. Sure, why not? You know, people who are just unlucky will never get somewhere. And yeah, well, that's just one of the banes of existence, and that's just unfortunate. But I don't have any answer to that. Anyway, the point is that everyone should pursue greatness, or at least the ones who want to do so. Like, if you just want to do your thing, like, whatever, like, people do, like, you don't have to pursue greatness. Like, if you don't want to do that, then you don't want to do that. One of my values is freedom, in that everyone can do whatever they want with their, like, lives. So if you don't want to excel at some field, if you just want to do, like, what people do, I don't know, like, what do people do? I guess they just, I don't know, if you want to just go to work and have a family and feed the family people and whatever, like I don't care, like, you can do whatever you want with your life. You don't have to pursue freedom. That's not the point. It shouldn't be some random idea that should be forced down the throat of everyone in the society, that they should try to acquire some skill somewhere or whatever. Like, that's people's, like, that's everyone's own choice what they want to do with their lives, of course. But if you're talking about like values that society, like, embraces, like values that are, like, held up to high standard in society, like, then yeah, in that case, the pursuit of excellence, or however you want to put it, enough with the terminology, that's not necessarily too important for now, as long as I get the idea across. The idea is what matters. The words I use are just a vehicle to transmit the idea. So as long as the idea gets across, then it's all good, I guess. Or whatever. Enough of this, let's see. So, yeah, on a societal level, it should be the pursuit of greatness and achievement that should be held to high regard. That should be something to strive for, not something to tear apart and want to bring down the people who are great, to look down on people who are at the top, whether at some academic or scientific or some art or engineering or anything. It doesn't really matter what the field is. They are all arbitrary. What I'm talking about is just good moral character, like being a person with like high standards, who holds himself like to a high standard and like morally and like whatever, some routines to take care of himself. Like, it doesn't really matter. It's really arbitrary. The point is that there is the pursuit of excellence. To excel, to be better. That's what this is about. And some people just don't have it in them. And that is inevitable. People are not equal. That's the point. One of the points. There are many points to this piece. That's one of the points I want to get across in this piece. That people are not equal. And yeah, well, it is unfortunate that some person who is not good at things, doesn't have talent and whatever, it is unfortunate that they were dealt a bad hand in life, so to speak, using some card game metaphor. Yeah, well, that's just how it works. Yeah, sucks to be you, I guess, but that's no reason to tear down the people who are great. Just because some people had some bad luck when they were born with bad genetics, or perhaps their upbringing is bad, or whatever, if you don't talk about the nature versus nurture whole thing, and like maybe they have like bad parents, or maybe their genes are just bad, or whatever, whatever the cause, like if you're just born to be someone who doesn't really have any particular skills or traits or whatever, if there are people who will never really, so to speak, make it, or whatever, yeah, that's unfortunate. And I do sympathize with that. But that is no reason to tear down the people. Just because you've had it bad doesn't mean that you can just go around and tear everyone else apart. Or feeling sympathetic towards people who are not necessarily good should then mean for someone who is not necessarily in that situation to then want to pursue some weird, bizarre ideology to bring the greatness down. Like just don't do that sort of thing. Like, don't. Like, I think society is better off with some people being really great and others not, than where everyone is not great. Where people have perfect equality. Yeah. I'd rather take the society where some people are really great and others are not, than a society where everyone is bad. Everyone is worse off. So yeah, if your value is equality, if equality is what you hold to high regard, if that's your standard, then you would pick the one where everyone is worse off. And that's a very miserable thing to do. Because why would you want to bring down the greatness? Just because some people are going to be worse off? Well, I can see why. It is envy. That's inherently what it is. That's why it's envy. Because the people who are not necessarily the ones who are the great people, the ones who are not great, if they are envious about the greatness of other people, then of course they want to tear apart those great people. That's the psychological drive for that. Ideologies and all the things, they are just manifestations of human psychology, because inherently they are created by humans for managing human things. So ideologies are just manifestations of psychology. So human psychology then is in those ideologies like that. They're just different. They just embrace or want to suppress different parts of human psychology. And as the ideology spreads, it affects the people who assume the ideology. So like, again, like I've mentioned, I like computers. I will use a computer metaphor, or analog perhaps is better. I will use a computer analog where like the human body is like the hardware, and then ideologies and religions and such things and all the schools of thought and whatever, all those philosophic things, they are the operating system. So the human body is the hardware. You could think of like society, of like people in a society, like they are like, if you have a society of autonomous robots who just have hardware and they don't have any software running on them, well, they would just sit there and not do anything. Like they would literally not do anything, because a computer on its own is just a hunk of metal. It doesn't do anything. It needs software to run. So there's going to be some software that runs on those people. Now, depending on how far you want to take this analog, perhaps there could be some low-level software that's embedded in the hardware already, so some basic functions will be already provided along with the hardware, like some basic biological needs, some like very primitive things could be already embedded in the hardware of the autonomous robot that is really just a computer with peripherals and extensions to provide hands and feet and all the movement so that the robot can do its thing. But those primitive things are really just going to be enough to like eat and reproduce or whatever, like reproductive functionalities and all that stuff, like whatever the species does, like very primitive things. And perhaps there are some like very primitive emotions, perhaps even, right? Okay, so like that's what the primitive side, I don't know, it's like the BIOS of the hardware. So then ideologies and religions and all those things, the philosophic things, they are then the operating system. You install an operating system on the hardware, and that determines the behavior of that robot. What operating system is installed on that robot, then that's how the robot behaves. That's what they do. That's what, like everything in society, all the culture, all the technology, everything you see. When you go to a society, everything you see, what makes societies different societies look different and behave differently, they have different values and everything. That's the operating system. So a human individual is both the combination of the hardware, so the hardware has some capabilities and limitations, and there may be some variation, and there will be variation between those different people, different individuals, different robots. There will be variations in the capabilities and limitations of those hardwares. And then, of course, there might be slight variations with the ideas, the operating systems, that as they spread and change over time and whatever. But fundamentally, that's like how one could think of human society from the point of view of a computer enthusiast. So if you're interested in computers, then like that's a good way to think of humans, like in that context, like human society, where like it's an operating system installed on hardware. So then, taking this analog and applying it to some modern society, well, they have a very miserable, bad operating system that takes it's a very inefficient operating system to take advantage of the environment that the robot exists in. So the robot, they exist in this environment, and they need to do some things to, first of all, like eat and reproduce, because like that's what they do. But like, if we're talking about philosophically, like the greatness and all that I've now talked about, the greatness is achieved by the people with like who can combine their hardware capabilities with a good operating system, and of course accumulated knowledge and wisdom, of course, too. That's important. So the ones who can combine that really well, who have a good set of everything, they have a good hardware, they have good operating system, and they have good experience and knowledge and everything, then yeah, like you could perhaps think of like the accumulated wisdom and knowledge and all that stuff, you could think of that as perhaps like some, I don't know, is the comparison to multimedia files stored on the computer's hard drive comparable? I think that's a good comparison. So as the person lives their life, the autonomous robot goes around and does stuff by reading books or whatever. I guess watching movies would function as the same. It doesn't really matter, or it's just living life and learning things and acquiring skills or whatever the form it takes, any acquired knowledge or skill or anything, it just gets like stored on the hard drive as like multimedia files. So like that's a good comparison. So the persons who have good hardware, good operating system running, and a good set of accumulated information, like they can combine this and create something excellent. So then people with a society with a bad operating system, a society that embraces equality and bringing down the great, with that operating system, the people are not going to create something excellent. The quality of movies degrades and is infested with some bizarre political things, and just art and culture and like science and everything falls apart as the greatness is brought down. The ones who have a good set of hardware and perhaps even some multimedia files on the hard drive, as far as the analog goes, they can't utilize the hardware very efficiently because the operating system doesn't allow that. When a person is born, or the autonomous robot in the analog, they learn the operating system from their surroundings and the people around them. Of course, the parents teach them, and society or school or whatever, and all the people around them, like, you know how it works, a person is born and that's the society they are born in, and they learn the ways of that society, so the operating system basically gets installed. A childhood is basically like the process of installing the operating system, one could think of it as such. So then, a society with a bad operating system will suppress the hardware capabilities. Individuals with excellent hardware their capabilities will be suppressed. The potential for greatness is brought down. What could be will not be allowed to be. And it is so unfortunate. There is so much missed opportunity, so much missed potential for so much excellence, because the human species is very capable of very excellent achievements. And it is just brought down. It is so unfortunate. I can't put to words just how unfortunate I think it is. It is very sad. But it's also, to some extent, very anger-inducing also. And I will go to another example of the prevalence of this mindset, this equality and bringing down the great in society. Now we'll go for it. Take as an example calling people who are, well, let's say, very knowledgeable and they have great knowledge and understanding of things of perhaps some technical or academic or such things. For example, computers. People with such skills, perhaps good at some fields of whether, like, basically, like, one could think of it as school things, like, let's say, history or mathematics or any sort of this sort of like an academic skill, perhaps, including like computer science. Like, those people, take as an example of calling them nerds. Think about it. If you think about it, a derogatory term used for people who excel at an academic area. Like, is that not the most perfect example of what I'm talking about. The so widespread, rampant prevalence of this awfully miserable worldview that penetrates all of society, bringing down the great, is basically perfectly exemplified in looking down on people who are capable and interested and good, excel at academic fields. How awful is that? And I'm not talking about this from like the point of view of the people who are like victims, if you want to call them, of name calling, like a derogatory term used against those people. Like, I'm not even talking about it from their point of view, like as sympathetic towards them. Like, I'm talking about it from the point of view of a society who treats excellent people badly. Like, what does that say about what does that say about the society? How miserable is that? That excellence is treated as a bad thing. It is everywhere. Like, growing up in a society like this, like, you will just come to treat this as normal. Like, that's just the way things are, because, well, that's the way things have always been, because that's the way you were raised, that's the society and the environment you grew up in, that's the operating system that was installed in your brain. So that's just normal, that's the way things have always been, and there's nothing unusual or particularly out of place in that. But think about it, you are calling excellent people who excel at something derogatory names. What on earth is going on here? In a reasonable society, in a reasonable society, you don't name call the people who are great at something, great people, the ones who excel at something. Yeah. What an unfortunate thing. Like, it is. You know, if only things could be better. Yeah. Yikes. Yeah. It is so bad. It is so bad. Like, it is so bad. If you like how bad is it? Like, before you've like seen it, like before you know about it, or like, no, once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. Yeah, that's the phrase. That really applies here. Like, once you think about it and you see this for once, when you come to understand this, when you come to see this, you just can't unsee it. Everything is so fucking wrong. Like, I don't know what's the solution, but like, does society need to be burned down and rebuilt in a new image? Like, I don't know what's the solution. This speech does not give you a solution, and that's not the example I just brought up about burning society. That's not an example of a solution. You know, that's just like the emotional state that I get in when I think about this. You know, why did it come to be this way? Why? Just why? Like, why did it have to happen this way? Why aren't people like is it not the correct way to do things? To see it as a good thing. Like, perhaps there was even a time, like, as far as I'm aware, there was a time when, like, knowledge about, like, culture, like, being cultured, was seen as a good thing. Like, it would be, like, seen as a person would be seen as a gentleman, or whatever, for, like, being cultured, and, like, but that's just not the way things are now. So yeah, there has been a degradation of society, not advancement of it. So it is an illusion that people think that, like, people now, well, I've already mentioned this, how we have all these computers and everything, that, like, people are somehow better today than they were in the past. I already talked about this. It wasn't the masses, the general population, who made computers. The random person you pick from the street, they didn't make computers, and they never can. They never will. it doesn't matter what you do, they will never make a computer. Some people are just not good enough to do something like that. People are not equal. Some people are better than others. Some people, if you pick a random person off the street, they will never accomplish the creation of a computer. And I'm just using as an example again. It doesn't have to be computer specifically. It's just a really good example. Any area, any field of study, any area, anything. People are not equal. But I do want to add one thing, because on a topic like this, it is important to mention all the details and be careful not to get the wrong idea across. You see, although people are not equal and some people are better than others, does this mean that a person's life is like less important, that like a person who is living their life and just wants to do their own thing is like they should be treated badly? Oh yes, so I guess a good way to put this, am I in favor of like some, what would be like an elitist supremacy society where like people who are badly off? No, I'm putting it the wrong way. Would I be in favor of a society where people who are not actively excelling at something, where they should be treated badly? No. It is everyone's own business what they want to do with their lives. So if someone, like I already talked about this earlier, but I want to restate this and specify it. What a person wants to do with their life is their business. So someone should not be mistreated because they are not excelling at something, because someone did not write some world-changing novel or make some work of art or produce some engineering achievement. Because a person didn't achieve all these things, they should not be looked down on. Like, I'm not talking about the negative act of looking down on anyone. That's not what I'm talking about. I want to get this. Yeah, I want to be very clear about this. I'm not advocating for looking down on anyone. Even the low-life scum. Yeah, well, whatever, like, those people will exist. But, like, I'm not advocating for the mistreatment of anyone. That's missing the point if you think that way. That's the way the equality people think. I'm talking about the opposite of that, basically. In a way, depending on whatever you are comparing, whatever, it doesn't matter if it's opposite or whatever. If it's opposite or not opposite, it doesn't really matter, that's irrelevant. What I'm talking about is the embracement of good. So yeah. Understand it correctly. The goal is to embrace excellence, not to attack and try to mistreat people who are not excellent. If someone just wants to live their life and not particularly achieve anything remarkable, that's all good. There's nothing wrong with that. So, like, it's not wrong for you to not be excellent. So that's not the point. So that's not what I want to get across. What I am talking about is the embracing of the ones who are good, celebrating the ones who are excellent. So yeah, enough of that then. So yeah, indeed, why did this come to be the way things are then, where the society is so badly off? Like, if I imagine that, like, a society where people would embrace greatness, calling people who excel at academic fields typically, calling them derogatory terms, name-calling them, like, that's the last thing they would do out of the list of options. Yeah, that's not what a reasonable society does. If you see that done in a society, that is a sign of a weak pathetic society. So I think there should be an active effort in embracing excellence, and something needs to be done about this, and this miserable nonsense society of bringing down the greatness and wanting to achieve this facade of an illusion of like equality and whatever. Well, perhaps you will get to equality if you really do bring everyone down all the way to the very bottom, because you cannot lift up the scum, because there are some human scum out there. You will never lift up the scum. So truly, the only way to achieve true perfect equality is by reducing everyone down to the very lowest possible level. Depending on how far you really want to take that. That is the only perfect equality. The absolute, total, and utter annihilation of any excellence, any greatness, any good. The most depraved, most miserable, evil people at the and also like the most like just the people at the very bottom, the most low life people possible, imaginable. You know, you can think of the random deranged rapists and whatever. Like it doesn't really matter what example you use. Like you will have to bring down the people so far to the bottom as possible. That is the only way, and it will always be the only way to achieve equality. There will never be a way to achieve equality without doing that. Yeah, I'll go as far as saying that there will never be equality without bringing people to the absolute bottom. So, depending on just how far you want to take the equality, that's the ultimate destination. That's where you want to take society. If equality is what you want. So, don't want equality. You should avoid equality. Or not avoid equality. You should avoid wanting equality specifically, because like I've now mentioned a couple times already, this is like the third time I'm mentioning this. Equality before the law is not incompatible with embracing greatness. The greatest people can still be held to the same law as the lowest people. The same law can still apply. The people can still be, in that sense, equal before the law. Or if you want to talk about in religious terms, then equal before God. Or whatever, you know, it doesn't really, like, those two are not incompatible. Yeah, that has to be emphasized. I don't want a society that is a hierarchical classist society. That is not, that's not what I'm going for. That's not what I'm advocating for. So, yeah. Let's see. So, yeah, I can't put it to words just how unfortunate it really is that society has degraded to this point. I don't really know, like, I'm not that familiar with history, but like I get this perception that like there would have been a time at some place somewhere that like this gentleman thing I mentioned. Who knows? But it doesn't really matter, like, specifically, like, has there been some active decline? That's not really the point. The point is that even if you just ignore history and whatever, like, you just look at here and now, like, you can see that, like, yeah, it's a pretty miserable thing. So let's try to do better. That's what I'm, like, saying. Now, of course, history is useful to look at cases where you can look at history and try to understand what works and what doesn't work, of course. So I'm not saying that you should ignore history. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is like, yeah, let's not name call people who are excelling at something. That on its own isn't really enough, of course. What I'm saying is more radical than that. That's just a very lame way to put it. But yeah, that is still a part of it, that like it's not as much about not name calling the people who excel as it is going to the root cause and eliminating the source for this in the first place. Name calling people who excel at academic fields, name calling them is a symptom. That is one of the many symptoms. Why all around society, like it is very widespread. It is everywhere. So yeah, that's just a symptom. So yeah, let's not call people who excel at academic fields nerds just for the sake of it, because name calling is mean. Whatever, that's not the point. I don't care about that. Let's attack the root cause and make it so that people don't want to call people who excel at academic fields derogatory names anymore. Right. So yeah, that's the correct way to put it. Excellent. So yeah. Strive for excellence. I guess there's nothing more to say for this speech for me for now. So, that's the end of this speech. Thanks for listening. Until next time, bye.